And now, on the trek through the lowest rated movies on IMDb, we've reached number 36, Bloodrayne from 2005, streaming for free on the Roku channel. My second film from infamous video game adaptation director Uwe Boll. Earlier I watched his lesser known adaptation of Far Cry. Now I'm at something that people have actually heard of, one of his big three, his 3-in-a-row failures at adapting popular games for the big screen. While these weren't his first movies, they were the ones that established his reputation as the next Ed Wood, except not as likable. From what I heard, his movies got slightly better when they started to better reflect his personality as a talentless edgelord. Maybe I should watch all of his movies and make a video analyzing his style and career and try to get a better picture of him as an artist. Actually, no, I'm not even getting paid for this. Hey, I've pretty much given up on promoting this, but the link to my Patreon is still in the description. But whatever, given that this is among his most infamous, I was expecting this to be a complete mess that would make Far Cry look like a masterpiece by comparison. But no, in fact, as bad as it is, this is still actually a lot better than Far Cry. In that video, I said it was the most forgettable movie on the list and that I was worried that I wouldn't have much to say about it. Yet I still give it an especially low half-star rating. And it did actually come up with a decent amount to say about it. And in hindsight, it was actually not that forgettable. It wasn't even the most forgettable I've seen for this series. This one has less wrong with it, outside the usual corny stuff, but nothing on the level of what little I've seen of House of the Dead. This might be the best of the three. I might not have much to say about it, although since I just said that, it pretty much just guarantees that this will be an extremely deep dive that'll take 7 hours to get through everything. Also, like Far Cry, I did not play the video games this movie was based on. I'm horrifyingly unqualified to say anything bad about this movie, so therefore that means I legally have to call it a masterpiece. Okay, I guess this is a quick review then. But yes, I have heard of the game by the time this movie was released. I've seen those department store catalogs that came with the newspaper. Yeah, I occasionally read them to pretty much just look at the video game section and maybe the DVD section. I probably didn't even ask for much of what I saw there, I just really liked games. I also might have seen it in stores, but I knew nothing more about it other than the cover art. Maybe also Bloodrayne 2. It was rated M, and back then I wasn't even allowed to play T-rated games. Yeah, at the time my parents knew less about the video game rating system than the movie rating system, so they were kind of stricter about that. But I recognized it by the time the movie came out. That's probably the reason it's the only Boll film I remember getting released. When I finally heard the name Uwe Boll almost a decade later, it was sort of a, whoa, that was the worst of all time? But whatever, apparently this movie is based on a PS2 era game of the same name about Rain, a hot video game girl who's half vampire and kills Nazis. In true Boll fashion, this has pretty much nothing to do with that. Okay, that's a little harsh. It's allegedly a loose prequel, what happened beforehand, like a couple hundred years beforehand. So yeah, this came out the year after Alone in the Dark truly brought Boll into the conversation of truly awful movie directors. With House of the Dead, people probably just saw that as a terrible movie and barely gave any thought to who directed it. But then when he did it again, that's when people started to notice. Source? I'm speculating. And then came the revelation that he was able to keep making these movies through a loophole in German tax law. So now he has another movie in this cursed genre of video game adaptations. I'm sure this time will be different. The fact that it's being released on the very first weekend of the cinematic dumping ground that is January instills a lot of confidence. And he somehow got a good cast, including Michael Madsen, Michelle Rodriguez, and most bafflingly, Sir Ben Kingsley. Why? For Rain, he hired Kristanna Loken, who had just gotten her breakthrough role in 2003's Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines, in her first ever lead role. It was written by Guinevere Turner, one of the writers of American Psycho. Sorta. No, she definitely wrote American Psycho. I mean, she only sorta wrote this one, even though she's listed as the sole writer. Let's start from the beginning. Okay, this first part doesn't explain anything about why the movie came out like this, but it's part of her experience. She turned her rough draft in 2 weeks late, leading Boll to be... Look, I'm not saying she didn't inconvenience him, but he apparently got really disproportionately angry.
Scripts are late. Writers are 2 years late. I was 2 weeks late. Uwe Boll calls me, "This is fucking disgusting! You lied to me! Where is my script?" I was like, whoa. I just called my manager and I was like, that man is never allowed to call me again. And he never did.
But anyway, before she never heard from his ass again, she still had to complete the script. And when she did turn in that rough draft, he immediately accepted it. As in, he just moved forward with production, with just a rough draft. That's all for her. But don't worry, it didn't go completely without edits.
The producer called me when the movie was just being finished and he said, "Don't be alarmed, Gwen. Uwe changed a lot of the script." Uwe doesn't really speak English. And then he let the actors take a crack at it. And I just want to say for the record, for anyone who's seen Bloodrayne, that I would say that about 20% of what I wrote is on the screen. And I have to say that the only person at the premiere at Man's Chinese Theater who was laughing out loud was me. I was laughing out loud like, oh my God. It's like a $25 million movie, and it blows. I mean, it's like the worst movie ever made.
Fun fact, the article where I found that interview closes by mentioning that last part and then saying, but then maybe she hasn't seen Far Cry. Anyway, what's up with the actual movie? Well, it's a prequel to the game set in medieval times. Rain is the result of a powerful vampire played by Ben Kingsley doing a really bad thing to a human that I can barely describe on YouTube, and then years later he killed the mother after she wouldn't give him her daughter. Now, Rain's an adult who's constantly in a skimpy outfit and is being held in a freak show where she's pretty much tortured for the pleasure of rubes who gawk at her regenerative abilities and the fact that water burns her. I'm presuming it was holy water. And her father is raising an army to take over the world. But Rain breaks away from the freak show at the beginning and sets out to find her father and get her revenge. So how is it? It sucks. Yes, it's so bad I'm resorting to ripping off Friedberg and Seltzer humor. It's a major Hollywood movie that basically has the look and feel of a CW show. And not even a decent one like the first few seasons of Arrow, more like, take your pick. An epic fantasy action movie that doesn't feel epic. It might be decent if it was a TV movie or something, but as a big Hollywood video game adaptation, this looks terrible. In all honesty, it's pretty camp, which would be great if that was what they were going for, and I don't think that it was. Uwe Boll's action scenes are only memorable when they're actively bad, which mostly comes when he just randomly shoots in some weird, almost slow motion but not quite style. These parts are shot in a weird, choppy frame rate, and that's exactly what the result looks like. It doesn't look cool, at all. It just looks like there's something wrong with the streaming service. For the record, no, there wasn't. Also, there's a point with some very questionable sound effects. I think that's a metal rod or something he's using. Shouldn't that be like a clanging sound instead of some bonking thing that sounds like someone being hit with a tube of wrapping paper or something? Either way, it's one of the more unintentionally funny parts of the movie. Pretty much the one good thing that can be said about it is that it does not skimp on the gore. If you like violent fight scenes, you won't be complaining about that. This is more violent than Far Cry and a lot of other violent action movies. And the violence does look good enough. There are a few things that look pretty bad, but other than that, it should satisfy people who want to see people getting cut up and can ignore pretty much everything else that's going on. And the acting isn't very good either. Everybody feels like they're just going through the motions. Ben Kingsley pretty much knows what he's in and doesn't even try to elevate it. You know, any other actor of his stature would use a part like this to prove that he can just have fun with the role. You know, just ham it up and add to the camp. Not him. He's not campy or serious. He's just reading lines, like everybody else in this movie. Surprisingly, the best performance may have come from an appearance from the late rock singer Meatloaf. He is actually trying to be campy. Or maybe the scene he's in is just campy by nature. He's a rock singer playing a vampire lord who is surrounded by naked ladies for pretty much the whole scene. I guess he could pretty much do anything outside of an Oscar-worthy emotional monologue and it would still look campy. You know what? Screw it. He nailed his performance. Final verdict. And crap, that is actually all I have to say about it. Anyway, it premiered at the Austin Film Festival in 2005 and got a full American release in January of the following year, and a German release the following October. It was distributed by Romar Entertainment, which had close ties to Billy Zane, who plays Michelle Rodriguez's father in the movie. It was originally set to open in 2,500 theaters in America, but before the release date, that number dropped to 1,600. And it would drop even further on opening day because Romar Entertainment fucked up big time. They sent many copies of the film to theaters that did not license them instead of where they were supposed to go. This led to the total number of theaters actually playing Bloodrayne being lowered to 985. The movie ultimately made less than $3.7 million on a budget of $25 million. But Romar can't be blamed too much for it because, unsurprisingly, the amount it made per theater was also pretty low. But Boll still rightfully sued Billy Zane for this in 2008. And before the DVD release, he had the name Romar Entertainment erased from the credits and packaging, leading them to stop distributing it. Yeah, the version of this movie that I saw has no logos before it. Straight to the opening credits. When I first turned it on, I didn't know about all this and actually had to rewind to make sure that it actually had nothing before it. Anyway, speaking of the DVD, there was also one for the unrated director's cut with an extended ending. Anyway, speaking of the DVD, there was also one for the unrated director's cut with an extended Anyway, there was also a DVD for the unrated director's cut with an extended ending with a longer ending, and it came with the copy of the full game Bloodrayne 2. Not that anybody cared enough to see his full uncensored vision, as the movie was almost unanimously hated and is considered to be among the worst video game movies ever. Not an easy feat. It was nominated for 6 Razzie Awards but lost all of them. The awards were instead dominated by Basic Instinct 2 and Little Man. I was going to say that's because the Razzies are out of touch, but then I remembered Little Man is the one where one of the Wayans brothers plays a little person who pretends to be a baby to avoid the police, so even though I haven't seen it, I can still say that it's way worse. But despite all this, there were still 2 sequels, although both went straight to DVD for obvious reasons. Bloodrayne 2 Deliverance came out in 2007, and Bloodrayne the Third Reich came out in 2011. Boll returned to direct both, but Rayne's actress was replaced by Natasha Malte. Also, actor Michael Pare, who was in the original, appeared in both of the sequels as well, but as different characters. These sequels weren't much better received. Also, in 2018, Uwe Boll accused the poster for Oscar nominee Phantom Thread of ripping off the poster for Bloodrayne because he's a freaking idiot who just wants attention. Anyway, Bloodrayne isn't as bad as I was expecting, but it's still definitely not good. Camp, but without a lot of the fun of camp. Uwe Boll does it again. I'm going number 10 here. Worse than Fear.com, not as bad as Superman 4, although it is less enjoyable than Superman 4. Either way, I can't believe a Boll film ended up reaching my top 10. Why? Anyway, there was also a DVD for the unrated director's cut with an extended editing. Anyway, there was also a DVD for the unrated director's cut with an extended editing and... Anyway, there was also a DVD for the unrated director's cut with an extended edit. Anyway, speaking of the DVD, there was also one for the unrated director's cut with an extended editing.